This is one of the most heartbreaking and disturbing cases even experienced investigators couldn't forget. In January 2022, the rotting body of 36-year-old Lacey Fletcher was found in her parents' home in Slaughter, Louisiana. She weighed just 100 pounds, but what made this case even more shocking was how they found her. Lacey's body was literally melted into the couch. Her skin had fused with the cushions. The smell, the sight, it was horrifying. Emergency responders said it was the worst case of neglect they had ever seen. The woman responsible? Her own mother, Sheila Fletcher, and her father, Clay Fletcher. While their daughter was wasting away on that couch, trapped, alone, and suffering. They were attending church, smiling in public, and pretending everything was fine. Lacey had been sitting on the same couch for 12 years, in her own waste, unable to move. The coroner said her death was due to medical neglect going back to 2010. Her body was covered in sores, and her lower half was basically an open wound. Her life ended in agony. But how did this even happen? Lacey had been diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, a form of autism, as a child. But in her early years, she lived a pretty normal life. She was sweet, outgoing, and even played volleyball at school. But everything changed when she was about 14. Her parents pulled her out of public school and claimed they would homeschool her. That's when Lacey slowly began to disappear from the world. Neighbors noticed she stopped going outside. One even said, "I haven't seen Lacey in 5 years." Others remembered her as smart, kind, but increasingly distant. Behind closed doors, her parents weren't helping her. They were isolating her. And over time, they completely ignored her basic needs. Sheila and Clay let their daughter rot in the center of their home, and no one knew. They presented themselves as a religious, respected couple. Sheila worked with the local city prosecutor. Clay was on the town planning board. But they were hiding a nightmare. In January 2022, Sheila finally called 911 and reported that Lacey had stopped breathing. But when paramedics arrived, they realized Lacey hadn't lived in years. Both parents were arrested and charged. The community was horrified. People who once admired them were now asking, how could they do this to their own daughter? Lacey's story is not just tragic. It's infuriating. She was failed by the very people meant to protect her. And it reminds us, sometimes, the most dangerous monsters live behind the most ordinary doors. Young people with Asperger's syndrome often struggle with social interaction and may come across as emotionally immature for their age. That was true for Lacey Fletcher. While other teens were discovering dating and independence, Lacey was still watching Disney movies and listening to country music. She wasn't into the usual teenage things, and even at 17 or 18, she'd invite neighbors over for Disney movie nights. One neighbor remembered her well. "I was 18, into motorcycles, and she just wasn't like other teens. More withdrawn, sweet, but different." Then, slowly, Lacey started to disappear from public view. People around the quiet town of Slaughter, Louisiana began to notice she wasn't out and about anymore. But she was an adult, after all. Everyone assumed she had simply moved on. Maybe she'd gone off to college or started a new life somewhere else. No one could have imagined the truth, that just feet away from their own homes, Lacey was wasting away, literally fusing into her parents' living room couch. On January 3rd, 2022, a 911 call came in. Sheila and Clay Fletcher had just returned from a weekend trip. Yes, they went on vacation. And Lacey was dead. She had been alone for at least 3 days, unable to eat, drink, or even call for help. One neighbor told reporters, "Someone saw her on that couch and told the Fletchers to call the police. Otherwise, who knows? They might have just buried her in the backyard." Lacey's case shocked Louisiana, then the nation, and eventually the world. People were stunned by the horrifying images that emerged, and even more stunned by what the coroner uncovered. Lacey weighed just 96 pounds. Her body was decomposing into the fabric of the couch. The autopsy revealed a nightmare list of conditions: chronic malnutrition, acute starvation, pressure ulcers, a severe bone infection called osteomyelitis, and ultimately, sepsis. This wasn't sudden. This was years of neglect. The coroner, a seasoned professional, said it was one of the worst things he had ever seen. The smell alone made him vomit on the front lawn. And yet, her parents lived there. Ate dinner, slept, came and went like everything was normal. Photos from the crime scene and coroner's office were shown to the jury. They were so disturbing that the room fell silent. People gasped, some cried. These images were never released publicly. And maybe that's for the best. Sheila and Clay were arrested. They showed no remorse. Sheila even claimed she cleaned Lacey's sores. But when Lacey was found, her body was covered in her own waste, even in her ears and mouth. They were released on bond just 36 hours later. $300,000 and they were free to go. Their defense? Lacey chose to live that way, that she didn't want to leave the couch, that she was mentally sound enough to decide for herself. But how can anyone say that with a straight face? She hadn't gotten up from that couch in possibly 12 years. The wooden floor beneath her had rotted away. The stench? Unbearable. The Fletchers had every opportunity to seek help. They chose not to. They kept living their lives while Lacey wasted away, in plain sight. In May 2022, the Fletchers were tried for manslaughter, but the jury saw it for what it truly was: second-degree murder. They were convicted, but the legal drama didn't stop there. In a shocking twist, their charges were later dropped due to a technicality. The prosecution had used incorrect language when charging them with cruelty to the infirm. Legally, they couldn't be charged with both murder and cruelty under the same indictment. Their lawyers pounced on the error, and the charges were tossed out. The outrage was immediate. How could they walk free after everything they'd done? But there was still hope. In June 2023, a glimmer of justice returned. The Fletchers were rearrested and charged once again with second-degree murder. District Attorney Sam DeQuilla vowed to see it through. "We will ensure justice is served. Caregivers must be held accountable." As of October 2023, they still hadn't been sentenced, but this time, the public is watching. And they're not letting go. This case is beyond tragic. Lacey Fletcher didn't just fall through the cracks. She was pushed through them, forgotten, neglected, discarded by the very people who should have protected her. Whatever happened in Sheila and Clay's past is irrelevant. When you bring a child into this world, caring for them is your basic responsibility. And if you can't do that, don't have kids. Let Lacey's story be a reminder. If something feels off, speak up. Call someone. Say something. We never know how many lives we can save by being a little more aware and a little more brave. If you made it this far, take a moment to leave a heartfelt message for Lacey in the comments. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss another story that deserves to be heard.